Hello, my name is Greg Arday and I'm the editor of KZN Invest magazine. This week we went out to Illembe to do a special on the developments along the North Coast and a range of interviews which explained the depth of business and the opportunities on the North Coast. I spoke to Kobus Olufse, who is the dynamic CEO of the Illembe Chamber of Commerce. Kobus outlined the challenges and the opportunities that exist in a really broad area where focus is understandably on land development and tourism because the area is so blessed in that regard.
Greg, that's one of the hardest challenges that I always have is people, there's this urban myth about how many people are moving into Ballito on a monthly basis and they want to know. But maybe just, in terms of official data, from the 2011 census in the Illembe district, we've got about 650,000 people. I think that's grown significantly though over the last 10 years since the previous census. And strangely enough, the people get excited about the KZN North Coast, but that's actually the Johnny-come-lately node, because obviously the node of KwaDukuza Stanger and the industrial node of Isitebe has been, long established prior to the growth that we're experiencing in Ballito. And I think you're right, that there's a huge amount of excitement around the KZN North Coast. There's a huge amount of excitement around the property development, especially in the Ballito, Sharkus Rock, Salt Rock, that type of area. But, what we're not known for, and I think that we need to create a better balance about, is that, there's significant industry as well. We're a seat of a regional and district and local government in KwaDukuza and Stanger, with quite a few provincial departments having offices there as well. And then obviously the district's industrial heartland, which is the Isitebe Industrial Estate, which is the biggest state-owned industrial park in the country.
I had the good fortune to speak to Chris du Toit, who heads up the Royal Shaka Property Group, which is overseeing the Collins development. And the conversation with Chris was useful in that it allowed us to have a real helicopter view of long-term development in the region.
Okay, my name is Chris du Toit. I run the Royal Shaka Property Group, or RSPG in short. We control approximately 3,700 hectares of land on the North Coast, and we're a land development company. And my role is to turn agricultural sugarcane land into developable land for top structure development. The market's been performing really well, certainly with the onset of COVID at least last year, and it's mainly because of the low interest rates. So residential property development is in a very good space at the moment. There's a lot of activity in the housing market, and there's also, we see a lot of activity on the North Coast because of people up country from Gauteng want to come live down here. And with the flexibility that COVID has taught people in terms of their working environment, they can live here and work for anywhere in the country. Basically, you either travel, or a lot of people are now working from home. So we've seen a lot of activity on the development side, specifically on residential, and there's a lot of interest, certainly in our space, there's a lot of interest for developable land from developers to do more development in this area. Also, one of the constraints is we've got the ocean on one side, so it creates value in terms of your property, but it's also a limiting factor in terms of how your development can grow. So it's always historically has been up and down the coastline. If you think how Mhlanga developed and Ballito developed, it's all up the coastline. We are in the fortunate position that some of our land holdings border areas like Stanger, which hasn't seen any development in probably 40-50 years. So it's not a North Coast rolling further north. For us, it's also developing areas around Stanger with whatever product we need, whether it's residential, social housing, affordable housing, commercial opportunities, etc., schools, hospitals, but also the coast is going to grow northwards. That is just the natural sort of migration of how these developments work. But I don't believe you can just build another residential estate on the North Coast. I think the market needs these sort of economic hotspots that we see in the future, specifically around areas like Stanger, and then you'll see a sort of a migration south and north, and somewhere in the middle we'll meet and create something really special.
I had a wonderful chat with Golani Gumede, a businessman who has great insights into the Illembe district. And the takeout from my chat with Golani was, for development to be meaningful, it has to be inclusive.
We haven't come to terms with how to stimulate the economy and the region with what we have. Maybe not so much relying on external visitors and the like, but how do we, as a collective, civil society, as business, as government, as labor, how do we come up with a master plan, both for our wonderful district, and then we come up with a master plan that works for the province, works for the country, and it can be something fairly unique. I think we're so indoctrinated to be looking for solutions to come from somewhere and plans to be originated from others, that I think we really need to just grab the bull by the horns, almost become cavalier in our decision making and say, well, we're going to make it work for our district. We're going to break the mold. We are going to get together as business and as labor and as civil society, and we're going to make it work. When that happens, there's inclusion, less disruptions. You don't get the type of knock-on sort of problems of businesses and construction sites being shut down, of service delivery protests and so on and so forth. I think as much as the political players have got a role to play, and politicians will always have a role, but I think that as the private sector and just the general population, we also need to take a bigger and have a bigger voice in saying we want to drive our agenda.
We spoke to Jeff Perkins, who is a key role player in the Collins Property Group. What was so encouraging to hear from Jeff was, apart from the scale of their developments, was the Collins Group commitment to conservation and how incredibly important that is to the ethos of that company, and how it will hopefully shape the development of the North Coast.
Our entire business, if you had to look at not only the residential aspect, but the other aspects that the business, the Collins brand upholds, first and foremost, without a shadow of a doubt, comes conservation. And Murray's massive on that. He is big on on protecting areas right from Botswana, Zimbabwe, up the North Coast here, wherever he's been able to do it, and he is extremely passionate about this coastline. So much so that we even ensuring that it's not robbed of its treasures more than what is allowed by virtue of your licensing. But we're having to kind of take that on privately because of Ezemvelo's challenges and so on. The conservancies, I mean, behind us you see most magnificent wetland here, are paramount to, I think, our vision first and foremost. So if you take Seaton into account, more than half of the area is under conservation, rehabilitation of wetlands, rehabilitation of natural forests, and that is first and foremost. And then we want to be able to cater for as many people as possible across the economic forums, and that's why it's important to bring entry-level housing into this kind of environment, as well as there's always a place for the top end as well. So all of those combinations just make for a really good environment to live. People want space. And I like to think of it, if you're in an entry-level home, your garden is the other 600 hectares that, that's the most magnificent garden you can have. You can walk out your door and run for kilometers, take a horse and ride on the beach, take your mountain bike and utilize the many trails, the kilometers of trails. And you can only really do that meaningfully with space. And that's why the more than 600 hectares that Zululami and Seaton will boast will allow us to do all of those things.
Thank you. What a wonderful opportunity to go out into the field and meet a range of really passionate people who are so integral to the development along the North Coast. I hope that their insights have been valuable to you and allow you to understand the prospects in that area a lot better.